Hi everyone, my name is Stefano Menegat, and today my presentation focuses on some issues that might be relevant for the future of food security in the US. I use a method called quantitative storytelling to explore the metabolic relationships connecting a particular pattern of social reproduction to the characteristics of food systems, in particular farm labor. The quantitative connection between food systems and the rest of society is given by the biophysical productivity of labor, which depends on environmental, technological, and socioeconomic factors. If we look at the history of the United States through this method, we find that in 1840, the proportion of human activity invested in food production was already very small, close to 4%, and it declined under 3% by 1880, 1.3% in the 30s, 0.3% in the 70s, 0.2% in the 90s, and 0.1% in 2017. According to demographic projections, in 2050, only 0.05% of total US human activity will have to produce the food consumed by the entire society. So food security in the US has been of some concern until the 1930s, and then labor productivity growth in the food sector decoupled from population growth. The growing urban population put a huge pressure on agri-food systems, and productivity increased following what Jason Moore calls a dynamics of productivity and plunder. The first step was the opening of the Western commodity frontier, where soil mining sustained the first American agricultural revolution. The second commodity frontier was opened in the 30s with the development of petrofarming. The third economic commodity frontier opened in the 19s through the process of reorganization of US agriculture around genetic, environmental, and human information through the development, for instance, of GMOs and precision farming. In the meantime, diets changed too. Departing from a decline in food, energy, and quality over the first period, passing through an improvement thanks to petrofarming, and ending in the current poultry bonanza. Over the same period, labor productivity in the food sector increased substantially thanks to the capitalization of farmers' labor through fossil fuel-based technologies. The US therefore enjoyed a food-secure past thanks to the exploitation of land, energy, and information. Here we see the ratio between the labor productivity achieved and the labor productivity required to feed the entire society. As you can see, the surplus followed again the three transformations of the US food regime. From being a supplier of raw ingredients and cash crops, it became an overproductive supplier of food commodities, boosting both economic growth through proletarization and geopolitical power through agricultural dumping. Until today, where we have a global feed supplier controlled by a few McDonald's-style large farms. But there is a fil rouge connecting these three transformations: the historical tendency of the US agri-food system not only to make food abundant, but to make it cheap. Growing food surpluses are linearly correlated with falling agricultural prices. But it should be noted that households' relative food expenditures tend to increase exponentially when the food surplus falls below 1. So, by 2050, the US food regime will have to deal with an ever-shrinking rural population and with a tiny share of workforce in the food sector. In addition, if food security in the US must remain as cheap as possible, food production will need to exceed the level required to meet demand. This would entail increasing labor productivity by 50% with respect to the current level. Based on this, food insecurity may arise when technical or environmental constraints undermine capital or labor productivity, or when socioeconomic constraints cause a shortage of farm labor. So I think that concerns about the future viability of a cheap food regime that is based basically on energy-intensive inputs are legitimated by the increasing threats posed by the environmental crisis and the social, technical, and economic challenges of the energy transition. So, thank you very much for your attention, and please contact me in case you have any question or comment. Thank you.